U.S. soldiers went to Europe and started raping European women, their own allies. You never have war without rape. Western culture. I played that song, or did I play it? I don't remember. Sex and Violence. Did I play that this morning? Sex and violence, sex and violence, sex and violence, me just can't take it. Freud and other white psychoanalyzers understood that they have this eros pathos, this sex imperative that they talked about in books like The Iceman's Inheritance. How the word F, I'm going to F you, blank K, both means sex and harming someone greatly. I'm going to F you up. I'm going to F you. That there's always been a convergence between sex and violence, dominance in sex, warfare in sex, erotic sex. They have the highest, the most romantic story in European culture, Romeo and Juliet, which is a suicide, death, murder, violent story. And they can't separate sex because now it's theorized that because Europeans grew up in a very hostile environment where they knew nothing but lack. They grew up in an ice age. They evolved in an ice age. They went from being humans to being this new manifestation of humanity that only knew lack. So even though humans and all living things have a strong drive for reproduction, Europeans have begun to understand that sex can lead to hardship because that's another mouth to feed. And how do I feed myself? I feed myself through competing with other tribes, through killing and competing. I have to take over territory because there's limited food. So the more territory I control, the more food I can have. The more food I can have, the more sex I can have because sex is no longer a threat. So they started developing this impulse for colonization, for expansion, for murder, systematic, ritualized murder. Murder is survival. Death is life. Life is death. So if you believe and you come up and they write this isn't me. This isn't me. This is their own philosophers. This is their own study. This is their own research on themselves. And so they associate death with sex. And the more you kill, the more sex you have. And the more you kill, the more material things you have. The more material things you have, the more sex you have. Ask Donald Trump how it works in their culture. So in the time when they were living in the caves on frozen land with scarce resources, sex meant death. Another mouth to feed, which means I either have to kill this baby or I have to go out and kill my neighbor to get enough to help this baby survive. And again, go read Iceman's Inheritance. Go read Urugu. Go read the ISIS papers. Go read Sigmund Freud. And I know white folks, they don't like Sigmund Freud anymore. You know, you talk to any song, so Freud was an absurdist. I don't think Freud was absurd. I think Freud's problem was he was too honest about white folks. And ain't nothing could get you in trouble with white folks more than telling the truth to or about white folks. And so when white people had their conquest, when white people secured domination over non-white people, what do they get? The men get to have sex with the women. That's part of you lose a war, your women get raped. And so for centuries, white men were able to freely rape black women with impunity, without consequences, which created a whole population of mixed race. And some white men, because they had the power to define, would say, well, this mulatto race is a special caste. Below me, but above blacks. Other places said a nigga is a nigga is a nigga, the one drop theory. So all the mulattoes, y'all get right down in the slave shack, y'all pick the cotton, and y'all gonna be right down there with them. And it would sometimes vary from plantation to plantation. It would vary from region to region, whether people of mixed heritage were allowed special standing and special privileges, or people of mixed heritage were had to subjected to what they called the one drop theory and were treated just like every other black person. And then you had some of the reverse, where certain populations of Europeans thought that dark-skinned blacks, or quote-unquote pure blacks, were more exotic and favorable than mixed heritage blacks. And white women would be often, if you read the history, instead of reading the Willie Lynch papers that's fictionalized, if you read the real history, there were many blacks of mixed heritage that were heavily brutalized, especially by white women, because white women saw them as a symbol of their men's infidelity. So they would make sure that the mulattoes get the worst work, the worst job, and this didn't just happen in the United States, it happened in Brazil. So we talk about this light skin privilege. Sometimes light skin was a liability, depending on whatever psychosis Massa was going through at the moment. So there was times where the mulattoes would get the worst jobs, to get the worst rations, get the worst accommodations, because you are evidence of, and depending on how much influence that the mistress, the white mistress had over the white master, it could be all gravy or it could be a liability. And now here we are, black folks, instead of saying it's all BS, let's overthrow it, we're trying to get in and figure out where we fit in that sick system. Trying to figure out how we can get the best standing within the sick system as opposed to overthrowing the whole stuff. We're debating about this stuff when it's not debatable. That's like debating over which part of the baby is most nutritious to eat. And black people want to say, well, you eat the organs, and the organs are more nutritious, but they are fatty. No, how about we don't eat the baby at all? Let's not ever do that. Let's not even consider that. But we got to say, hey, let's figure out within this racial hierarchy, under white domination, where do we fit? And does black people get, what do black people get? And mulattoes get light skin privileges? And let's say, hey, let's take this whole thing, this whole system derived from this, all of the politics, the culture, the art, the economy, every aspect of this sick system, and toss it. Let's say we're not even going to debate it. But no, we ain't going to debate it because y'all want to debate it instead of overthrow it. Very well. For a long time, white men, because white men in Western culture dominate, is patriarchal. Women are considered subhuman and inherently evil and unclean in European and Arab culture. And they imposed that on us. Now we got black men running the same game, but I digress. White men had unfettered access to their white women, to black women, to Asian women, to Native American women, to Aboriginal women, whereas white women were cloistered, or what Howard Zinn said, the intimately oppressed. So even though white women often had the power of life and death over blacks, they did not have the ability to just play out their sexual perversions and fantasies with black men because of white men' ego and insecurity. Again, all of this racism stuff can be all drawn back to white insecurity. Everything else, nuclear bombs, everything else built on the foundation of white pathological hyper insecurity and their various complexes. So then there came a time after emancipation, after the women's rights movement and the women's suffrage movement, a time about the mid to late 60s where white women could finally have free access to their subordinates, free sexual access. And we often define this as black men started dating white women. Black men don't date white women. White women date black men. Why do I say this? Well, we go back to Dr. Bobby E. Wright. When you have a racial hierarchy, and a black man could probably say, I'm into white women, but it's like I say, they choose you. You don't get chose. You get chose. You don't do the choosing. So when a white woman says, yes, I'm open to this, then the black man can proceed. But we all know what happens if a white woman is not open to this, even if the black man don't proceed. You get your Emmett Till. So white women finally got to match what the white man had been doing for generations. The white woman had to sit back for hundreds of years and watch the white man rape, violate, impregnate black women. And black women watch this, black men watch this, but between white folks. And so white women was like, finally, it took me to the 1960s. We've been conquesting, colonizing, controlling, enslaving, running things for 500 years. And it took me to the 1960s before I was able to go get me a buck. And I'm sorry I have to use this language, but I think we need to know this. I can now go get me a buck. I can take their finest men. And so black women also took the position that all these black men were finally got a little taste of the nectar, of the forbidden fruit. And they saw, our finest athletes, our most prominent black politicians, our most prominent black scholars, our greatest black artists, Leroy Jones, O.J. Simpson, and on down the line, back in the 60s and 70s. And so black women were started to have this delusion that, hey, being with a white man is liberating. Because for so long, we didn't have options, which you've been raped by the white man for generations, but now you can quote unquote voluntarily be with the white man. But just like black men don't choose to be with white women. And if you don't go look up Bobby E. Wright's Menticide, where he talks about how whites choose blacks, blacks do not choose whites because of the power dynamic. Also, Neely Fuller states that under global white domination, when you had these power disparities, there is no such thing as an equal mutual relationship between a black and a white person. Now, we all understand that when it comes to the police. We understand this when it comes to education. We understand this, the economic disparities. But I'm sorry, I wish it were true. Those same power dynamics do not disappear when you get into bed. They don't. So when a black woman lays with a white man, when a white woman lays with a black man, the power dynamics do not melt away. They're right there in your loins. They're right there under the sheets. So Neely Fuller and some other black theorists state there is no such thing as interracial marriage. There is no such thing until black people are liberated, until black people are have been liberated and have full self-determination. All relationships between blacks and whites are exploitative and imbalanced. And I know that hurts the heart of a lot of people because there are a lot of black people in love with white folks and a lot of white folks who imagine they're in love with black people. But I would imagine if you truly loved a black person, instead of just marrying and sexing, you would go and overthrow global white domination. And so now black people imagine, for logical reasons, reproducing with the white person will give your offspring a leg up. Because your black phenotype will be diminished and will have some white characteristics. And not only will they have some fewer or diminished black phenotype, they will also have, through their white parent, greater access to white resources and white opportunity and white privilege, but also white pathology. And so this is the deal black people have to make. And so these are all the issues that come with black people. And then there's a lot of people that try to act like, well, this is just love. This is just me and my man, me and my woman. This is just love. But we live in a society, an interdependent, highly integrated and complex society. There is nothing that you do on your individual level that does not have a societal impact. And there's nothing that happens on a societal level that does not impact you individually. So when all these things come together, and you got black women who are promoting swirling, and you got black men that not only say like Stephon Clark, I don't want nothing to do with no black ugly women, using the same stereotypes, or Tariq Nasheed running around calling black women bed wenches and all this stuff. What the hell is we to do about it? I would say this, and this is what I recommend. Ultimately, what's most important for black people, individually and collectively, is for us to dismantle the systems and institutions of global white domination. Not only for our well-being and survival, but for the life-sustaining capacity of the planet Earth. The most important obligation and most important priority for white people is to dismantle the systems and institutions of global white domination. And ultimately, just, righteous, sane people, human beings, will all have this goal. And regardless of how things fall down, Because I know for a fact, white men been having sex with non-white women for thousands of years, and it has not stopped racism. You can be racist and married to a black woman. I have seen, I don't speak on opinion on these issues because they're too charged. And I don't get my feelings in these issues. When they say, can you be pro-black and have a non-black spouse? Absolutely you can. Why do I say absolutely you can? Because I've seen it. There's concrete written evidence of black people being pro-black. Now, pro-blackness is a very low bar. Being pro-black is low as hell. In fact, I call pro-blackness pro-whackness. Now, I'm not going to get into it because I don't have time. I'm not going to get into all the ways why pro-blackness is highly inadequate. And since blackness, especially being contaminated by all these foreign ideologies and religions and philosophies, blackness is a lot of things. And there's a lot of things within pro-blackness that I'm not pro. There's a lot of things in blackness that I'm anti. There are a lot of things black people are doing in mass, culturally, whole black nations. Obama, Mandela, the black church, the black mosque, the Nation of Islam, the NAACP, Rainbow Push Coalition. There's a lot of things about blackness that I can't really get with, that I can't be pro. Pro-blackness is a small bar. Pro-blackness essentially says, I am comfortable, secure, and in love with my blackness, and I encourage other black people to be that too. But there's really no specific agenda rooted in pro-blackness. There's no specific outcome or aim for pro-blackness. It is a state of mind and a state of being. You see a black person doing well, succeeding and achieving. And that's whether a black person got into Harvard, whether that black woman became a general, the first black female general in the Marine Corps. If you're pro-black, you applaud all that BS. I am revolutionary Pan-Africanist, which meaning my blackness has, again, I love this, terminology, phraseology, terms, and conditions. If you're a black person, I don't support you because you're black. If you're a black person working in the best interest of black people and standing in direct and aggressive opposition to enemies of black people, and you are pro-liberation, pro-Pan-African unification, there's a lot of things you have to be in order for me, like, yeah, I'm down with you. I support you. I give you my stamp of approval. Just being black, it's not enough. Not enough for me. So yes, pro-blackness is a very low bar. Can you be pro-black and with a white spouse? The answer is absolutely yes. We have evidence of that. There are so many people from black history going all the way back to Frederick Douglass, that says these people had a secure sense of their black self and wanted other black people to have a secure sense in their self, and they are supportive of and inspired by black people making achievements. It's a low bar. So let's take it higher. Can you be Pan-Africanist and married to a non-black spouse? And I hate to say it, but it's true. But yes, absolutely, you can be Pan-Africanist and married to a non-black person. How do I know this? Who is one of the greatest Pan-Africanists who ever lived? Kwame Nkrumah. Was Kwame Nkrumah married to a black woman? No. Was he still a Pan-Africanist? Yes. Was he such a great and effective Pan-Africanist that the CIA had to mount a coup d'etat to overthrow him because he was a threat to the neo-colonial agenda? Absolutely. Yes, he was a Pan-Africanist. He was a great Pan-Africanist, but he wasn't married to a black woman. Maybe he'd have been more effective. Maybe the coup would have been a little less effective. I truly believe if Obama wasn't married to Michelle, they probably would have assassinated him in office. But you know, I mean, for the brothers out here married to a black woman, you know how a black woman be coming. You come into a little money, you come into a job. She's, it's like we got this job, we ain't losing this job. And she tell you everything you need to do, and you need to tell your supervisor, and what you need to do. And when they put that promotion on the table, you tell them, and you know how a woman manage your life. I'm sure she was in Obama's ear. Let me tell you, don't you take that trip, Obama. Don't you go to that, and don't you shake that dignitary's hand. And what you gonna do? I mean, a sister try to run everything, won't let you breathe. Your diet. So who knows? If Nkrumah would have definitely been better off, I think, with a black woman, an African woman. I think, you know, I have a strong feeling that the coup d'etat would have been less successful if it not failed totally if he had a black woman. That's just my speculation. Just knowing, having been with a black woman or two, my own damn self, you know, she would have been like, I think Obama, if he was with a white woman, they would have assassinated him. He wouldn't have got a certain term. Again, all speculation, which we are free to do. So yes, you can be a Pan-Africanist. You can even be a revolutionary Pan-Africanist. I really wish that this world was so set up, so black and white, so up and down, so clear and so consistent, that we could look at a black person and say, hey, this black woman has a black husband, this black woman has a white husband, and the black woman with the white husband, we know she's a sellout, and the black woman, and we can depend on them and that, but evidence doesn't. Take, for example, Joseph, aka Mobutu Sese Seko, who was a black man with a black woman, and you put him up next to Kwame Nkrumah and his wife, and you definitely would look at Mobutu and his dark-skinned black African traditionalist wife, and this black African head of state with his Arab wife, then we all gonna go with Mobutu. But we know that Mobutu not only set the stage to upend the Congo, Mobutu was the conduit that allowed for the total destabilization of all sub-Saharan Africa. There is no greater sellout than Mobutu Sese Seko, up until Obama. My most hated head of state of all history was Mobutu, up until Obama became the head of state and started doing his dirt. So we know that it's not a clear-cut thing. You can't just look at somebody's spouse and say good or bad, down with us, sellout, traitor. Now you can have issues, all the issues you want. But I'm just going off of the historical record. I've been attacked for this. I've been attacked for this. People get mad at me and they want me to be so clear, and I want to be so clear. And there was a time when I was so clear. I was able to make these absolutist claims about interracial couples, about gays, about everything, about women and black men and white people. I was able to make these concrete absolutist positions. But I decided, hey, I got to be rationalist because this stuff ain't working. This absolutist. I have to go with the facts, work with the facts, live with the truth. So all this swirling, talking, this and that, it's tantalizing, but it's not even that interesting to me. The real measure of any black man or woman, individual, is do they make a positive contribution to the just aspirations of African people? And remember, I didn't say a positive contribution to the aspirations of black people. Trying to help black people become CEOs, trying to help black people become generals in the military, trying to help black people become billionaires. That's not a just aspiration. And as far as this swirling, there's a lot of historical pain, a lot of historical psychopathic dysfunction that we have to work out. But as Fanonian philosophy teaches us, the only healing, and there's a lot of people talking about healing. But I have to wrap this up. I don't have much time left, and I want to play some of this Norman Finkelstein stuff. I think I created more questions than answers, and I didn't get halfway through my notes. I apologize. I'll try to do better time management. Bro Diallo, Q4 Radio. Now we're going to go and listen to the Holocaust industry, and what I don't get to play, I will post again on my website and on my Facebook page, but I don't want to not play this.